Here we go. Go ahead and say something.
I am saying something right now.
Well, here we are again. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. And today I have Josiah Smith on, and we're going to talk all kinds of good stuff, we think.
Probably.
I just told Josiah that this is the least prepared I've been yet for the podcast. So
yeah, I thought about thinking about something on the way here, and then I decided, you know what? We'll wing it, just like Josh does all the time.
Not all the time. Do you consider me a wing it type of guy?
I've thought many things about you in many different situations.
Like what?
They're always interesting. It's always an interesting thing. It's always a different thing.
About me?
About you.
Give me something.
Oh. I thought you looked like a 45-year-old man the last time I saw you.
Last time I saw Josiah, he told me I looked like a 35-year-old wild man.
Yeah, you hair crazy.
Well, I got a haircut today. I needed one, but I don't think I look like a 35-year-old wild man.
You look good now. You look fantastic.
Thanks. I think you also told me I looked like a chemistry teacher. Or somebody told me that.
Was this
before.
Recently?
Yeah.
I certainly have thought you looked like a chemistry teacher.
Like when I had my glasses on and my big beard.
Glasses, beard. I remember your mustache era. That was cool.
I do.
I just left my mustache era.
Well, see, you've always been the guy with the like you and a mustache go together like peanut butter and jelly.
Can I gripe for a second?
Please gripe. I'll gripe away.
I apologize. So for context, I've had a mustache for the last 4 or 5 months, right? Then I'm like, you know what? I don't want to be that guy with a mustache. That's a certain personality. I don't want to be associated with that anymore. I want to be able to talk to people and not having them stare at my face.
But it wasn't weird for you to have one. That's what I'm saying. Like when I had one, it was like a thing because I don't usually have one.
Well, I had it for so long.
You just had it was just part of you. So and it didn't look bad at all.
Anyway, so I shave it because I'm like, I want to be clean shaven for the first time in 5 months.
Right. And
then every single person that saw me that slightly knew me, even if they didn't really know me, but if they knew they'd see me around, they would come up to me and be like, you shaved your mustache? Why? And I'm like, okay, what if I got a haircut? You know? What if you got a haircut, Josh? Mm-hmm. And somebody went up to you and instead of saying, oh, that you look so good, or maybe they don't say anything about it. Maybe they don't notice. They go up to you and say, Josh, you got a haircut? Why did you get a haircut?
That's fair.
I was fine.
So what you're saying is you were trying to be more normal by shaving off your mustache, and then everybody was like...
Everybody just talks about it. But
it was weird.
I mean, if they were like, oh, it looks good. Oh, I'm happy to see your face. Instead, it's always, wow, that's weird.
Weird for you.
This is my face. I can't
How often do you shave? If you're trying to stay clean shaven? Because yours grows back faster than maybe anybody I know. Am I trying to
impress people, or am I doing what I would naturally
if
do?
You needed to keep it down,
I'd have to do it every day.
Because you have very dark.
Yes, it's dark and it's thick in certain places.
Yeah, it comes in quick.
So that's kind of why I've had a beard in the past. It's not because I think it looks good. It's just inconvenient to shave every single morning.
Dude, if I had to shave every day, yeah, that'd be super inconvenient.
But I don't know. I just think I look better clean shaven, so I'm gonna.
I think you should grow your beard back.
Anyway, Josh is introducing his podcast.
All right, yeah, let's get back to the order of business. So Josiah Smith is another mentor here on campus. He's also in Smith. Yeah.
Yes.
You're with Zach. So we had Zach on last week, and we had a good conversation. I've gotten pretty good feedback about that. And Josiah's on third floor. Zach's on second. No, other way around. Sorry. Zach's on third. Josiah's on second. Josiah, this is your first year mentoring.
Correct.
He was a speech GA last year.
I was.
Which we may get to that a little bit later because of some further developments. But anyway, we'll talk about that in a minute. And I've known Josiah. Man, I don't even know when I met you. I've known you longer than Zach.
We met in Greek class when you would cheat off me every quiz.
I did not cheat.
That was the one.
That's not true either. I get blamed for a lot of things on this podcast, I'm finding out. No, okay, yes, you're right. Because I took Greek, and in Greek 1, the first class, my buddy was Michael Beauchamp. Michael, if you're out there, if you hear this, I'd love to have you on this podcast. So I need to get you on. You'd be awesome to have. But anyway, and then Greek 2, I think, is when Josiah and I were in class together, and Michael was not there anymore. So I needed somebody to help me who knew what they were talking about. And like, Michael was just brilliant at Greek, and Josiah was really good too. But I think Josiah like knew how to like fake it more, or I don't know. But like, you knew what you were talking about. Like, you helped me a lot, but you tell me that like you didn't. But I don't really believe you.
I was really good at getting good grades in Greek. I was not good at mastering Greek. So you would ask me, like, what about this topic? Or what about this word? What does this mean? Or what about this grammar structure? And I would get frustrated at you. I'd get frustrated at you a lot. Not because I was bothered by you asking me, but because I had no clue.
That's so true. But you seemed like you did.
I was like, why are you talking to me about this? Well, I do have an air of confidence when it comes to
that kind of thing.
schooling,
yes, you do. Yeah.
And I don't want to give off the impression that I don't know what I'm talking about.
But like, I don't remember you ever like telling me you didn't know.
No,
you always were like, I think it's this.
I wanted you to think that I was smarter than I.
Apparently, you wanted me to keep asking you for help.
Yeah, it makes me feel good.
Anyway, but those were good times because Josiah and I went through a lot of Greek together. I wasn't a Bible major, but I had to take it for my humanities credits because I had been a Bible major. Anyway, long story. But yeah, those were some fun classes. Were you in the one with what's his name? Augustus? No, we didn't have Augustus. We had who was the first one we had? Ezra.
Yeah, Esdras Borges.
Yes, and then the second one was.
It was always him.
No. We had.
No, you're right. We had Minnick.
Andrew Minnick. Yes.
Who is in Australia now?
I don't know where he is. He was tough. He was a good teacher, but he was tough.
I don't like him.
I feel
his
like
haircut was really cool.
I think it was just a regular haircut.
Yeah, it was just like such a haircut.
How do we keep getting back to haircuts in this podcast?
I don't know. Because of your fresh haircut, that's why.
You're right. Shout out to Josiah Swaffer. Do you get your haircut by him? Josiah is the brother of John, who I had on my first episode.
Wait, does he go here?
Josiah? Yeah. Yes.
I don't think I've ever met him.
Yes, you have. Surely.
I haven't.
Well, maybe not. He's across the hall.
Wonderful.
I'll introduce you to him later. I'm surprised we haven't met him.
Podcast. I'm
he wants to be on here too. I got to get him. I got to get him on here too. Anyway, so yeah, Greek. I guess that is probably where that's where we bonded, and then from there, I just found out that Josiah and I had a lot of common interests that are rather unusual common interests. That like I could talk about things with Josiah that I literally could probably not talk about with most other humans on the planet. And we'll get to some of that stuff here too later. But Josiah is a very he's very analytical. He's a deep thinker. He enjoys a good conversation. We were just talking about what did you tell me a minute ago? You told me that you feel like some people are a little too prone towards humor in their conversation. What did you mean by that?
It's not a problem. It's just a certain tendency people have is to make jokes, and I'm not that guy. I'm not going to go out there and be like, tell all these jokes to make people laugh. Make you laugh, but you laugh at everything.
Josiah makes me laugh. That is true. I do laugh at a lot of things. There's a lot of funny things.
I love analyzing things. I love thinking about things. Whether it be a movie, a TV show, a book, something in a class or a sermon, whatever it is, I want to dig into it. I want to know what is being said.
He does too. It's also reflected in your academics. But anyway, let's get to that in a minute. Real quick, I want to talk for a minute about my purpose with this podcast. I know I'm switching gears here, but a couple people have asked me to just mention why I'm doing this because I haven't really talked about it. But just real quick, basically, over break, I was thinking about how people leave school because I had a couple friends graduate last semester, and I, and like they're moving on to their jobs or back home or whatever, and when people leave, I always think to myself, man, like there's a good chance I may never see them again, and like I probably will, but there's a chance I won't. And so I just I was like, man, it'd be cool to have conversations with those people on record, just to have like in 20 years, that like that's going to be awesome thing to have. And so it's kind of like it's almost like a conversation, like scrapbook or journal or something. And the purpose is not really to get a huge audience, although I'm happy for whoever wants to listen. But it's more just an insight into like my friends and the conversations that I have with people, because I have a lot of unique and just fun conversations with a lot of different people. And so I wanted to record those and put them out there for whoever was interested. So does that make sense?
I think it does.
You can pretend like you're my audience and ask me, and you can tell me if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. So that when you're, 40 years old and struggling with amnesia at a surprisingly young age, look back on the time you talked with me about whatever we're about to talk about.
No, I'll be like, I don't know. I'll like probably lose like the files, and then they all stumble upon them, and I'll be like, "Oh my word, Josiah Smith! I forgot about him."
It's such a tender moment.
No, when you're like a world famous pastor, I'm gonna have blackmail stuff on you.
World famous pastor. I'm not a big fan of world famous pastors because they're typically not famous for good things.
I mean, all good things. Like I feel like you could be like the next. Who would you be? You'd be like the next Paul Washer, but a little less like
interesting.
No, a little less emotional.
Thanks. I pride myself in not being emotional.
I think you are emotional, but you don't show it like Washer does. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but yeah, that's why I wanted to do it. And so if anybody has any other questions about why I'm doing it, feel free to reach out and ask. But yeah, so let's see. Tell me about, man, I don't know where I want to go here. I have so many options with you. Well, let's go to what you did last year real quick. Talk about teaching speech, because you taught speech last year. And the reason why I'm curious about this is because it looks like my goal right now is to do that next fall. I'm going to be ceasing the mentor job, and I will be hopefully starting the speech GA spot. So Josiah and I are kind of switching positions here. But he did it last year, and he's had a little bit of advice for me. And like I don't know, I just remember you telling me that you enjoyed it, but you felt like to do it, you needed to be passionate about speaking, and I don't know. Give me some stuff.
Yeah. Well, I've always wanted to teach. It didn't really matter what I wanted to teach. I just wanted to teach something I knew something about.
Mm-hmm.
I want to eventually go out, teach the Bible. So it looked like a good opportunity, and I think it was. It was a profitable experience for me to go out and teach speech. But there's something about teaching a class that every student you have hates. That's pretty hard. So right. Here at Bob Jones, you have to take freshman speech or foundations of speech. So 90% of the people in your class don't want to be there. And it's honestly one of the most terrifying, if not the most terrifying class they will ever be in.
Right, as a freshman.
As a freshman, even beyond, when they look back, freshman speech will be the hardest thing that they do.
Like I've heard that like there are people who won't come to Bob Jones because they're afraid of
it was
a freshman speech class. That was you?
Well,
as a kid?
I was thinking of going to Cedarville.
Why? Because of that?
Oh, I was going to follow my brother's footsteps, going to go to Cedarville. But then I heard there were several factors, but one of the things was that they had a freshman speech class that that all the students had to take. And I was like, I don't want to take a speech class
at Cedarville.
So I came to Bob Jones. So I didn't have to take one. And then I still had to take one.
So you didn't know about it?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I was not the brightest senior in high school.
Who was your teacher?
My glow up was not in looks. Let me tell you that.
Who was your teacher?
My freshman speech teacher?
Yeah.
I had great Judson Green.
Judson Green. That's right. You told me that
I grew
before.
up with.
You did?
He was from my church.
Interesting.
So I knew him before he was.
Talk about a mustache man.
He was always kind of quirky.
He was the mustache man. He was always quirky. Right.
But I loved talking to him.
Yeah.
So it was cool that I had him as my speech teacher. And I developed a lot through that. Both taking speech, and then I think I was chaplain of my society for 4 semesters. So I learned a lot of public speaking through that experience.
Right.
I did some church internships. So while I might not have had as much training in public speaking as some of the other speech TAs,
right,
I had a lot more experience than any of them.
I see.
Public speaking was very common to me at that point when I went into the position.
Sure.
So what I didn't realize, I certainly would have worked harder at if I went and taught again, is how important the classroom dynamic is for speech class specifically. For every class, you want to have students that like each other, that get along, that talk to each other outside
developing
of class,
classroom
before
community
class,
type
after
of thing.
class.
Yeah.
That's important in every class to some degree. In speech class, it is quadruply important.
Because they're speaking in front of each other.
And if you have students speaking in front of 14 strangers, they are going to really struggle. They're going to be very anxious. Whereas if it's 14 people that they talk to on a regular basis, it's going to be a lot easier for them. It's going to be less awkward for everybody. And less awkward for me as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Speech is, the way it's taught here is very discussion based. Now it's depending on you have authority to switch it up how you see fit. But discussions tend to be the most effective way of teaching this material because it gets them talking. And anytime you get them talking is good for a speaking class.
Right.
So there were a couple classes. I had 6 different classes, 3 each semester of the 2 semesters I did it. I had a couple of those that really vibed well. There was good energy in the classroom. They were laughing. They were talking, making small talk before and after. And those classes were a blast to teach. So fun. Every single time I'm going up there, I'm really excited for that class period. Mm. Other ones didn't have that. And it's really awkward.
Because you're trying to get them to interact. You're trying to get them to talk.
Get them to interact.
And they're just not.
They're not doing it.
Oh, I mean,
which breeds the awkwardness.
But you know that every teacher here would tell you that that's just normal, right? You're going to have classes who are that way, and you're going to have other classes that are way more interactive and talkative.
Yeah, you can certainly try things as a teacher to fix that or to improve that situation, that awkwardness. But a lot of it is up to the class itself. How do their personalities mesh? They might not even be conflicting. They just don't quite click together.
Right. When
it clicks together, really fun time. When it doesn't, it builds on itself. So if it's not good at the first, 2-3 weeks, it just gets worse.
You don't think I'm sure there is, but is there, I guess that's what my question is. Is there stuff the teacher can do to help facilitate community, to help kids get to know each other? Or is it more just it just depends on the luck of the draw, who's in your class?
There certainly is. The first thing that I recommend to the teacher, number 1, learn the students' names. Get them talking about themselves. Day 1, the classes that worked really well, what I did was not only did I have them introduce themselves, what I did, I had them break up into groups of 2. And I had them talk to each other for like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just get to know that person. And at the end of that 5 minutes, you were going to stand up and you introduced the other person.
Yeah, that's a good idea. I've done that. I've done that in some classes before, and it's been actually pretty fun.
Yeah. And it's going to be hard for some of them.
Right.
But throw them into the deep end, right. get them talking.
Right.
So number 1, learn their names. Number 2, get them talking with each other in the class hour. Not even necessarily about public speaking. Get them talking about themselves, their interests. And you just keep doing that. Number 3, force them to speak. Now that's kind of the same as number 2, but
sure.
But do exercises where you are forcing each person to stand up in front of people, talk about anything.
Right.
But the more they're talking, the more they're talking not in their speeches, the less they'll be nervous,
the more comfortable
during their actual speech.
Right.
So,
because you're just trying to get, and again, in my mind, like, they're freshmen, and so I was scared when I was a freshman. I wasn't the most comfortable person talking in class ever. And so the more that they can get used to that as freshmen, that's the better they're going to be set up even for the rest of their college career, and so, yeah, it's a speech class and learning how to give a speech, but I think there's also probably an element of learning how to interact in class, right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. Of course, I haven't done it yet, but yeah, I have to give my audition lecture 2 weeks from now. Did you have to do one of those?
I did.
What was it? How was it set up? What did you have to do?
You have to do some factor of attention.
Yeah, I just have to do one of them for like 10 minutes. That's it.
Which one did you choose?
Laura Beth told me to do concreteness reality.
Reality.
As an attention factor.
I don't remember which one I did. Something along like movement through a story. Anyway, you just prepare a lesson. You get a lesson plan together. You give it to them. And then you have 8 to 10 minutes where you just teach that attention factor to a couple GAs, and then
all the
probably
GAs.
Laura Beth. You have all of them?
They're all coming.
I had 2.
I thought it was going to be 2, and then somebody told me they were like, yeah, actually we're all coming.
I had 2 plus awesome. Janine Allmiller.
Oh, dude, okay. I have Dr. Allmiller in Persuasion right now. She's amazing, and she is intimidating to me.
Yeah, I actually go to church with her. She goes to Cleveland Park, yeah.
Oh.
So I talk with her pretty frequently. She's super cool.
Yeah. She's intelligent. She's
purposeful.
On top of it.
She doesn't waste words.
Mm-mm.
Which would make sense for somebody who taught speech for so long. But even in a conversation, every word has a purpose.
I haven't had a one-on-one conversation with her yet.
You should.
I need to, yeah.
She's very God-oriented. I just had a conversation last Sunday with her about, my plans for the future. And she was immediately going to, I'll make sure I'll pray.
Interesting.
Make sure you're seeking out advice. Make sure you're praying about this. Make sure you're thinking about what's best for your development. And I was very impressed by, I'm not surprised, I suppose, but I was impressed by her passion for God to be glorified in.
Yeah, she's been that way in class too. And we've talked about biblical examples of Christian behavior in a persuasive context. That was a lot of words, but and she's having us write this biblical philosophy paper on persuasion, and she has been very just oriented towards the Lord, and that's been great. She's like I said, she's also intimidating, and here's how intimidating she is. The other day in class, she was talking about how intimidating she is, and it wasn't weird or awkward. It wasn't sometimes people talk about themselves in a weird way, and it's okay, you think too much about yourself. It wasn't like that with her. It was no, she's exactly right. She's exactly like that. and she knows it.
Yeah, she does a great job of making even awkward conversations not awkward just by how confident she says everything.
Yep. Yeah, you just feel like when you talk to her, like when she's talking, you're like, she knows what she's talking about.
No, yeah, she's right. I have to agree. It doesn't even matter.
She's definitely
I'm
right.
agreeing.
I'm just persuaded immediately.
That's a good ethos right there.
That's right. We learned about the three big things: pathos, ethos, and logos.
Well done. Good.
And I not even know what they are.
You know what they are?
I think so. Logos is truth. Logos is your argument, the validity, the soundness of your argument. Ethos is your reputation, like how people view you, like how they think of you when you're speaking to them. And then pathos is your emotional connection with your audience. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yes. Which one is the most important?
I feel like that's a trick question.
It's not. There is an answer.
There's one that's most important?
There is, yes.
In what context?
In the context of I'm trying to persuade somebody. Which of ethos, pathos, and logos is the most important for persuasion?
I'm going to go with ethos.
Well done. Good guess.
When Josiah's happy with you, he's really happy with you.
Oh, I'm so happy.
You just feel really good. Okay.
Hey, just think about it for a second. So
I'm going to plug my computer in here while you talk.
So obviously you should have a good logical argument. You should have a good emotional argument. Those are important. But I'm going to believe most likely most people believe things from people they care about, people they love, people they respect. So if I'm going to be persuaded to believe something, I'm going to be persuaded by somebody I trust, somebody I like, one of my friends. We have a thing in our friend group. We have a friend, Trey Woodbury.
Trey's coming on this podcast soon.
Who loves scripture, who loves God, love talking to him. He's very thorough in his thinking.
Yep.
He's very passionate. And if he changes his mind on something, all of my friends are like, maybe I will too.
He's well respected.
Without any other thinking on the topic, Trey has a persuasive ability, not because he's logically amazing, though he is, not because he's emotionally compelling, which he is. It's because we know Trey. Mm-hmm. We know he's not going to believe something unless he's convinced. He's not going to do something unless he knows it's the right thing to do.
Right. Yeah.
You just trust him because it's Trey.
Right.
So for persuasion, we as mentors.
Yep.
You as a believer, if you want to persuade somebody in any way, they have to be convinced by your life, by your character, by the way you present yourself in times that they see you, in times they don't. That comes through as well. So it's a good reminder for all of us.
No, for sure it is. Pull that mic up just a little bit, just a teeny bit. That'll help a little bit. There you go. And this is interesting because I've been thinking about this, and I've always thought this. You can apply that to a lot of realms, but you can also apply it definitely to the political realm, which right now with the elections going on, I've been thinking about this more recently, but it doesn't matter how logical a candidate is, and it doesn't matter how really even like their emotional connection. It just matters if I like them or not, and like we've seen that more recently even, but I like in my experience, most people, like, it doesn't matter really what's coming out of the person's mouth. It just matters whose mouth it's coming out of. And because like you like watch like a Joe Biden speech and you can't even understand him, and the crowd's like, they're on their feet cheering, because of whatever, for like, it seems like no reason. And then you see the same thing at like a Trump rally, and it doesn't matter what he says, they're going to go wild for him. And so it's an ethos that that crowd has bought into. and they've placed that person's ethos, whether it's good or bad, they've placed it above any type of logical argument, any type of emotional sway or appeal, even though those elements still play in. But it's really all about, I like them, I'm on their side, I don't care what they say. And like, that's just how people are. We either like people or we don't like people, right?
Yeah. Talking specifically about politics, I'm not a huge fan of politics, and it's because of this reason. In public speaking, there is a concept called eloquence.
What's it called?
Eloquence. This does not mean just sounding pretty or saying really fun, decorated things. Mm-hmm. Though it might involve that. The concept of eloquence is, in persuasion, is when you meet your audience where they are and take them to where they should be, where you want them to be.
Right.
There's an idea of improving your audience. That I have information that will help my audience become a better person, a better Christian,
right,
a better American, a better whatever it is. And I want to convince this person because I want to help them. So the concept of eloquence is the ability of a public speaker to meet them where they are, take them where they need to be. When you get into politics, you don't see persuasion anymore. No one's trying to persuade you to do something different.
That's actually a good point.
They are using certain phrases, certain concepts, certain images in order to rile their side up and to make the other side look dumb, look like idiots, look weak, look foolish. And this goes both ways.
They're attacking the ethos.
When you think about, when you think about the abortion issue, very hot topic, both sides. I'll pick on the Republicans first. You don't hear politicians use logical arguments or emotional arguments why abortion is wrong and sinful and bad. What you hear instead is, oh, these people, they want to kill babies. They are so evil. They are so corrupt.
The argument is almost assumed.
The argument is kind of thrown
It's not
away.
even really talked about.
So they're not trying, the politician on the Republican side in this case is not trying to persuade the Democrat or the liberal to change their mind, because you don't change people's minds by calling them names. You change their minds by meeting them where they are, finding some commonalities, and then introducing, oh, well, what about this? There's just actually something wrong.
Right.
And I want to help you. You don't see that, again, in politics. It's all name calling. Very name calling.
Character slander.
You're not changing people's minds. You're simply getting your side to be really excited.
More riled up. And like the only thing that draws people over is if you're interesting to them. Like you said, there is very little here. Let me convince you to change your mind on this issue. It's more like, here, let me show you how good of a performer I am. And if I look better than my opponent on the debate stage, if I give off a better air, if I seem more put together, then I might win over some votes because people like me. Because, it's a TV show is what it is. It's like, that's what it's become. Have you ever heard, I'm sure you've heard about the Nixon Kennedy debates. Mm-hmm. And they say that it was the first televised debates. And of course it was on radio broadcast too at the time. And like everyone who listened on the radio said that Nixon won the debate. And everybody who watched it on TV said that Kennedy won the debate, because Kennedy was young and good looking and charismatic. But Nixon maybe had he had better arguments, but as soon as we threw TV, as soon as TV got on the scene, it changed everything. It became so much about optics and the show than it did about let's talk about this, let's reason this these issues out, So yeah, it's interesting. I think I'm more interested in the political scene right now than you are. Although I don't know. I don't really know what you keep up with.
No, I am not interested in politics. Not because I don't think it's important, but I would much rather convince the world of things than beat them into submission. Thinking about abortion, going back to that thing. I would much rather convince the social world, social America, that abortion is something that is evil and wrong than get laws put in place that makes it illegal. I want it to be illegal.
Right.
But I would much prefer the other Americans, every American, to say this is something that's bad.
Yeah.
Because that's more important in the long term.
In the long run, right. And I mean, I was talking about this with my brother the other day, but you have like the argument between, like with abortion especially, you have the argument of like, okay, do we say we're ending abortion now? Like we're just gonna, like you said, we're gonna beat people into submission. Like we're gonna get the laws passed. We're ending it now. Or do you play the long game and say, all right, I'm okay with a certain number of week ban, and I want to do this in the long, in a long haul type of way, convince people along the way, and then maybe win a much more long-term victory in the end. Because that's how the leftists, I think, got control of a lot of higher academia, is that they started small, nobody really paid attention, and then all of a sudden it was like, oh, all of our universities are infected, and so like what's the right way to approach it? And like there's arguments on both sides of how you handle issues like of importance like abortion, but yeah, I definitely understand like this is going to be a long fight, and the more people we can win over, the more people we can talk to, and hopefully convince, witness to, whatever, like that's going to be better in the long run.
Yeah. My spokesperson for abortion or anti-abortion.
Sure.
Or pro-life. Soon. That's not my passion. It's something I believe wholeheartedly.
Right.
My desire would, instead of abortion being my big thing, it's people know Jesus. Do people love him? Do people call him as their Lord and Savior?
Mm-hmm. And like the answer to the abortion question will flow out of that.
Yeah, the answer of the abortion question will flow out, as you said. Now, that's not to suggest social gospel, where all I'm interested in is the progress of this earth.
Sure.
I don't want people to become Christians because I want abortion to be illegal. I want people to become Christians because that's God wants.
Right.
It's because I want more people to be glorifying him.
And one way to glorify him is to stop abortion.
And one way, yeah. So I want to get to a deeper issue, a more important issue, a more eternal issue. And if there is the bonus that abortion is removed, even better.
Right.
And I know, the Holy Spirit's working.
Right. God
is certainly working in America. Maybe not in the way that we want him to.
Right.
We could come down 15 years from now and I don't know what America looks like.
Right.
It could be the same. It could be better. It could be a lot worse. I don't know. But I know from what I know about God and how he's worked in history, how he works in scripture, that it's going to be good in the
Mm-hmm. Well, and like that's when you start talking about the gospel, like you have to understand that like it has effects, and so yes, of course, that's the root issue, but you should expect it to have effects on something. It's not like, and like things like abortion, things like social issues, like the more people that become Christian, the better our society should look. Like just logically, right?
Yeah. Again,
because Christian people do Christian things.
Yeah.
Hopefully.
I don't want that to become
the focus,
the goal.
Right.
Again, my goal in bringing people to Christ is not to gain more Republicans in the Republican Party.
Right, of course.
The goal, I mean, even if everybody turns socialist, I don't know.
Right.
I want people to.
Right, of course. But yeah, very good. You
got me talking about politics.
I know.
That's impressive.
I slid
it. It doesn't happen very often. You're tricky.
I told you we were going to talk about it. Let's talk what we were talking about yesterday. Josiah is a huge Lord of the Rings fan, J.R.R. Tolkien fan. I, in my younger teen years, well, really most of my life have been as well. It's been a big part of our family, the books especially, and the movies. And Dad really enjoys it, and he just read it to the boys. Anyway, this is one of those things that I can talk about with Josiah that I can't really talk about on the same level to most people, because most people don't have the depth of knowledge that Josiah has. And that I'm not as, I don't have quite the depth that he does, but I can keep up a conversation about it.
I haven't had friends for a long time. I had a lot of time to study things that don't matter. And this was, in fact, one of the areas that I studied quite a bit of.
You were homeschooled, right?
I was not.
No, you weren't.
I went to a high school with 10 people.
Okay, you were homeschooled.
Yeah.
Because I went to a high school with 8, and it was all my siblings.
I went to a real high school with 10 people.
That's funny.
Our basketball team had 12.
That's good. The homeschoolers?
Yes.
I played on a Christian school football team. That was half homeschoolers. Okay. Anyway, good stuff. So, okay, I guess the first question is, of course, what's better? If we're just talking Lord of the Rings at the moment, the books or the movies?
Which time do you have?
We got all night.
I think the question itself is a foolish question.
Okay.
What's better, the Mona Lisa or Beethoven's Fifth Symphony?
Foolish question.
Yeah. What's better, the Eiffel Tower or something not a building, you know?
The Eiffel Tower or a building, which is better?
Or not a building.
Okay.
I'm starting to think of analogies right now.
I'm picking up on your point. I'm tracking with you.
What's better, a book or a movie? They're different things. And they need to be evaluated.
Whoops.
They need to be evaluated in a different category of each other. Yes, they're covering the same story, the same characters, in general, the same material. But the content of a movie and the content of a book have to be very different. One way that you see this is in books. What drives the message of a book? Typically conversations. Maybe this is contentious. I don't think it is. Action in books is not really that interesting.
Nope. You're exactly right.
Oh, he picked up his dagger and he swung it at the enemy. Who cares?
Right.
What drives a book are conversations. Who's saying what to who?
Or descriptions, maybe.
Ooh. Get my grammar right. Descriptions of things.
Yep.
My favorite part of the book, maybe because I've started it multiple times and I've finished it not as many times, is Gandalf's conversation with Frodo at the start, like first or second chapter or third or whatever. Interesting. Where Gandalf is simply explaining the history of the ring, the history of the world, and he's just talking to Frodo, and then Sam, gets hit with the stick, brought up on the into the room, and they're making plans of taking the ring. Yeah, because
he's like hiding outside the window.
Yeah, taking the ring to Bree, which is pretty funny in the movie. that's like 40 minutes worth of reading. I'm a slow reader.
Mm-hmm.
If you had a 40-minute long conversation in a movie, it's a bad movie.
Right.
I don't care what you say. It's a bad movie.
Well, and this is funny because a lot of people's complaint about the movies is that they're too slow. Like the Lord of the Rings movies, they're like, oh, they're so slow. And like, I watched the first one last year at some point again, and I was like, this is moving way too fast. Like compared to like the book. Like, it's like exactly the point you're making.
If you're comparing it to the book, it's much, much faster.
Right.
Mainly because books take days and days and days to read. And you can watch the series in a day.
Right.
It'll be an exhausting day for sure.
9 hours long or whatever. Yeah.
But you got to give it time. You got to.
Yep.
A complaint I often hear is that the book has so much more things that the movie does, that the movie ignores Tom Bombadil. Where's Tom Bombadil? Right. Why don't we have Tom Bombadil in the movies? Because he doesn't make sense in the plot. In the context of a movie, you don't have the time. You don't have the time to introduce Tom Bombadil and explain that whole arc. You cover that in about 10 minutes in the movie. I mean, not even that. You don't have time for Tom Bombadil, a character that just puts on the ring and then dances around and then sings to his wife. You don't have time for that.
Do you have like theories on why he's in there? I
do.
I read a whole book on this.
I don't know what he is in the lore, but I know Tom Bombadil is a character in Tolkien lore outside of Lord of the Rings and really outside of Middle Earth. He wrote a short story, like a poem, epic poem. Is that?
Yep. It's called like In the House of Tom Bombadil or something.
Yeah, and it's just Tom Bombadil. Outside of the context of Middle Earth, really, I haven't.
I need to send you. There's a book that I read by an author that I like who did like a. It's a pretty short book, but he did like a study on Tom Bombadil, like who he is. It was really good. Like there's some cool stuff. It's called In the House of Tom Bombadil. I'll send it to you by C.R. Wiley. And he talks about a lot of stuff, but like he's like, I don't want to give too much away, but he's like, he basically like talks about he's a type of Christ figure in a really cool way. Like, I don't know, there's just some cool stuff. I'll have to send you that book, but he's a cool character. But yeah, anyway, back to what we were saying. There are two different types of things, the movies and the books. Yeah, you shouldn't compare them.
You can't compare them. You could say, movie has these faults or the book is good in these areas. So in some sense, you could say The Lord of the Rings is an amazing, amazing book. Maybe not as good of a movie. I wouldn't agree with that. But it's, as in movie form, it's like top 30 movies of all time. In books, that's like top 2. Right. So is the book better? I don't know. Right. But you can't really compare.
And that's how I've always felt too, is like they're both great in their own respect, like in their own regard, for different reasons, exactly like what you're saying. And like watching the movies is going to be a different experience than reading the book, and you should be able to separate them. And like some people are purists and they feel like the movies ruin the books, and I've never had that. I've never felt like that.
I would like to be able to imagine some other person than Viggo Mortensen playing Aragorn. I'd like to be able to picture Orlando Bloom not as Legolas. So in that I can't read the books now and not picture Orlando Bloom and his flowing locks, shooting people with arrows. Works.
But hey, it could be worse.
Could be worse.
Yeah.
But yeah, what I would say about the movies, the important thing is whether the movie captures the meaning of the book, right. the deeper meanings,
right. the points that Tolkien was trying to make, or whatever,
the spiritual thrust of the book. I don't want to. Tolkien hated allegory. So Lord of the Rings is not an allegory. Right.
He says that explicitly somewhere.
Yeah, he was not. C.S. Lewis and him were friends, at least for a period of time. C.S. Lewis loved Lord of the Rings. He loved The Hobbit. He loved Tolkien's writings. And it kind of inspired him to write his Chronicles of Narnia series. Tolkien did not have the same affection for the Chronicles of Narnia.
He said it was like a hodgepodge.
He was not a fan.
He's like, what is this?
It was kind of like, can compare it to something in our friendship, but
well, it actually is a little bit like us, because Tolkien is like the guy who's like the world building has to be like perfect.
You're C.S. Lewis. You're happy. You enjoy life. You have a good time. You're fascinated by different ideas. I'm Tolkien. He was like, yeah, that's stupid. Dumb. Not going to do that.
The other day we were sitting at dinner and Josiah was complaining to me about the world building in Harry Potter, but he was doing it in an analogy form, and he didn't tell me he was complaining about Harry Potter.
It's funny that I was complaining because I've never read Harry Potter. I've watched five of the movies.
You just have watched the movies recently. I've never read it actually or seen it, but he Josiah started giving me this elaborate analogy, and I didn't even know what he was talking about. And then I realized he was complaining to me about Harry Potter and the suspect world building. Anyway, that was funny, but that's Josiah.
I just
Josiah's analytical side coming out.
I try not. I think I'm a happy person.
No, you are.
I just like things to be perfect. Sorry. Anyway, what were we talking about? Tolkien?
Tolkien and Lewis and their relationship.
Oh yeah, about the purpose of Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not an allegory, but there are biblical themes strewn throughout Tolkien's writing.
Would you call it a Christian book? Like a Christian story? Because I was arguing with some people about this the other day. I made the comment. I was like, yeah, Lord of the Rings is a good Christian movie. I just kind of said it to light some people's fires. And then we had this long talk because everybody was like, what are you talking about? And what I meant was, I don't mean it's a faith film or a faith book. I just mean what you just said. There are biblical Christian ideas infused throughout. That's what I meant. You agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, I probably wouldn't call it a Christian film. I would define it differently.
Sure.
Because I can find Christian values in a lot of movies. Puss in Boots, for instance. The new one, The Last Wish. That's a recommendation.
Josiah's been trying to get me to watch Puss in Boots with him for this whole semester.
2022 version.
We're going to watch it soon. We might do an extra podcast after that and review it. Yeah, we'll see.
Dude, it's a good movie.
If Josiah says something's good, it's good. I don't get this is part of your ethos that you have with me. If you recommend something to me, I know it's going to be good.
Thanks. I appreciate it. Because I'm critical.
You are.
Hyper critical. Yeah, so you can find biblical themes throughout Lord of the Rings. Does the movie bring that out as well? And I think the movie does a good job of bringing out many of the same themes. Now, it does it in different ways. It's going to do it with different characters in different situations. But in general, it's going to bring out the same themes.
Right.
Deeper meanings that the book does.
Right. So, okay. Those two, most people agree. The books are great. Those movies are great. The Hobbit's great. Have you read The Hobbit?
Yes.
Awesome book. The Hobbit movies, not so awesome. At least in my opinion. I don't know. Did you watch? You watched those at some point?
I have, yeah.
They were. What did you think?
I just turned off my hypercritical version of myself for the Hobbit movies for a little bit. They added a lot of stuff. Again, I don't mind that. I do find taking away content is better than adding content. It just makes it more faithful to the original story. It also hurt that people were expecting another Lord of the Rings.
Well, I don't understand why they felt like they had to make 3.
Well, it's because they felt like they wanted to make a prequel to Lord of the Rings.
But make 1.
I suppose you could make 1, maybe 2. But people want Lord of the Rings again. We want to see Orlando Bloom.
Right.
We want to see Bilbo in his actual days. We want to see Gandalf beat up orcs again.
Right.
We want to see that.
Right.
But so they tried to infuse The Hobbit with the darker undertones of the Lord of the Rings,
which is not what the book has. Like, it's a children's book, right?
The Hobbit is the Lord of the Rings is dark. Now it's fine for reading, but in general, it deals with a lot of scary things, a lot of intense moments, a lot of hard and hopeless moments. You know, you have Frodo going into Shelob's lair after casting his friend to the side and saying, I hate you, go away. That's very serious. Yeah. It's not really what you have in The Hobbit. The Hobbit is very lighthearted, very funny, very cute.
And so when you try to take a movie and make it the same way that The Lord of the Rings was, it's going to be tough.
The storyline was not conducive for the heavier tones. So there's in the movie The Hobbit, you have times where they're trying to make it more lighthearted. You have the barrel scene, funny scene in the books,
right? Kind
of a funny scene in the movies, but within the context of the movie, it was a very serious thing. Mm-hmm. You're very scared for them. You have orcs coming into the fort, the elvish, palace or whatever. Like, this is a really intense moment, and then you have jokes being made of dwarves floating around in barrels.
It like doesn't fit. It doesn't fit. The two things didn't go together. Yeah.
So you kind of tried to.
Point, actually.
You kind of had to. They were trying to mash tooth, the funniness of The Hobbit with the seriousness of Lord of the Rings, and it ended up not being. Not flowing well.
And like, I've seen that. Like, that's actually something that comes up I've seen that in other places too. Like, in some of the Marvel movies, it's like they do the same thing. It's like, this is kind of like a serious part, and then we're gonna like throw in some funny stuff just because, and it's like, why are we doing this?
That's why Infinity War, Endgame, Avengers, I really enjoyed, because they didn't try to be funny all the time.
Yeah,
it was a very serious topic, and they treated it as such. I typically don't talk about Marvel though, just because there's so many movies.
Yeah, I know. It's a whole rabbit hole. Yeah.
Who even knows?
Yeah. Okay, so you are enough of a fan that you've also read the Silmarillion.
I have.
Like the whole thing.
I have. I tried to memorize it.
For those who don't know, the Silmarillion is like the anthology of all of Tolkien's lore and backstory put together. And somehow I have also read that. I'm not sure how I have, but I did. At some point in my teenage years, I read the whole thing.
Yeah, the Silmarillion is a different thing.
Yeah, totally different.
I would recommend people read Lord of the Rings all day long. I love it. I think other people should read it. It's long, so I don't always recommend it. The Hobbit, I recommend all the time. Mm-hmm. Oh, you want to read a fiction book? Read The Hobbit. Cute. You could read it in a day if you really wanted to. Maybe a weekend. I never recommend people read the Silmarillion. I love the Silmarillion.
I love the Silmarillion. Do not recommend.
Do not read it. Now, that's not to say if you want to read it, go ahead and read it. I'll give you tips. And I think you should read it if you're really invested. But it's not going to be like a typical book. You're not going to read it. You're not going to find Lord of the Rings again. Mm-hmm. What it's going to be is, it's kind of like reading mythology. We always talk about mythology like it's so interesting. Mm-hmm. If you read mythology, it's kind of weird.
It's kind of weird and kind of boring.
Kind of hard to read.
Yeah.
Doesn't flow the same way. And the Silmarillion is a lot like that. There's not dialogue in the same way. There's not action in the same way. Now, it does have some moments, but it's kind of like reading a history book. Yep. or a mythology, or been compared to reading the Bible in some ways. It's good, it's fun, but you got to get used to the style. It's much different than a regular book, a regular fiction book. What the Silmarillion is, as you said, it is an anthology. It's a collection of stories. More specifically, at least not thinking about the actual plot of the Silmarillion, but thinking about how he wrote it, why he wrote it. Tolkien was He was born in the 1800s, but lived primarily. Was he born in the 1800s?
I don't know, actually. Yeah, I think so.
But very late. He spent most of his life in the 1900s. Fought in World War I. Was a teacher of philology or languages, the development of languages.
1892. He was born in South Africa.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk. Or at least Elon lived there. Anyway. Rabbit trail.
He was very fascinated with languages. He was fascinated with stories told in those languages. Mm-hmm. Think Beowulf. He has a translation of Beowulf.
Right.
That was kind of his passion. Germanic languages, especially.
Well, he was a philologist.
Philologist, yeah. Study of these languages and the development of those languages. And he loved the stories told in those languages. And he had the idea, okay, I want to write stories as well. I want to write myth as well. And this stems from the creation of languages. That's a funny thing. That's a funny connection to make. You wouldn't make that connection right off the top of your head. Like, oh yeah, language inspires story, even though it kind of makes sense, but I don't know. You wouldn't. Well, if you have a language without things to say in that language, there's no point to the language.
Right. Good point.
There was a part of, actually, C.S. Lewis and Tolkien worked on this together. Let's say we know Latin. Well, we know of Latin. People can learn Latin.
Right.
If they really, really want to. But let's say Latin didn't exist. But you had Italian. You had Spanish. You had German. Well, German wouldn't really work. You had English. You had Romanian. You had French. You have all these daughter languages of Latin. You could reasonably put together what Latin was based off the similarities between French and Spanish and Italian and Romanian and all these languages.
Right.
So you could invent a fake language that was the parent of all these other languages.
Right. Which would look a lot like Latin.
The thing is, Latin doesn't really we don't need to do that for Latin because we already know Latin.
Right.
It was well preserved. But that's not the same for the Old English, Germanic roots. That Germanic language that was the parent of all these Eastern European languages has been lost to time. Nobody speaks it. Nobody knows it. So what Tolkien and what Lewis, because they both had the same occupation, what they were both trying to do was trying to recreate that language by looking at these other languages. So yes, he invented languages on the side for fun, but Tolkien, that was his job. His job was putting together, recreating these languages.
Yep.
And as he was doing it, he was doing some on the side as well, creating his own languages. And he created stories to go along with that. So when you look at the Silmarillion, it was posted after he died.
Yep.
People are kind of like, oh, it's the sequel to Lord of the Rings. It was written after. Everything written in the Silmarillion was written before Lord of the Rings.
It was just him, like
pretty much before The Hobbit, like during the same
world building. He was just writing stuff.
Yeah, and he didn't have the idea of continuity. Like this connects to this story, connects to this story. Now, there were some similarities, some connections. In general, he was just trying to write myths. Oh, this is a cool myth. This is a cool myth. There's one story called Baron and Luthien, if you remember.
Yep. The best one, probably.
The best one. It's a romance story between an elf woman, Luthien, and a human man, Baron.
Baron.
It's a great story. It started out, or at least one phase of the storytelling, it was called the Tale of Tinuviel. Her name was Tinuviel. And in Baron and Luthien, the big bad guy is Sauron in wolf form. In the story of the Tale of Tinuviel, the big bad guy is actually a bunch of cats. The big collection of cats.
Really? I don't know about this.
And one really mean big cat.
So this is like how he wrote it originally?
That was not necessarily the original story, but along the way it adapted to the story of Tinuviel trying to get back her hubby from a bunch of cats.
Which sounds very mythological.
That are really that
feels,
just talk.
Yeah.
So it didn't have the continuity. It wasn't Sauron.
Right.
It was just actually it did have an impact in the lore of Lord of the Rings. Elves hate cats.
Really?
In the Lord of the Rings because of the Tale of Tenuvia. Even though
I didn't know this.
It's not actually true anymore.
So you're basically saying he wrote a bunch of myths that he thought were interesting, and then later on started to pull things together and make connections to build a whole saga out of it.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
When you look at modern fiction, this is kind of really how Lord of the Rings is different from modern fiction. In modern fiction, you have a book you want to write. I want to tell this story. So you write the book, and then you like try to back it up with fake history that you include. And some authors do a great job of that. We talked earlier about Harry Potter. J.K. Rowling didn't come up with all these things. Then it was, I want to tell the story of Harry Potter in a wizard world. So she creates those at the same time. Lord of the Rings was written at the end, pretty much, of 40 years of world building, of language inventing, of myth inventing.
Which is crazy.
Which is why Lord of the Rings, why the history of Lord of the Rings feels so rich.
Yep.
Because that was the thing.
Right. It was like literally a history. It was like actually a history to like pull from. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And like, I don't know. I mean, it's like you said, it's not the most captivating read ever, but it's also not like dry. Like it's, if you enjoy that kind of thing.
If you pay attention to it, and I recommend this, if you like keep track on a piece of paper, what's going on. I had a map, you know how you can flip back to the map. Mm-hmm. I printed that map out so I could like draw lines where people are. Keep in mind who's related to who, because there's a lot of names. If you do that and pay attention, it's really interesting. It's got some cool lessons to learn.
Oh yeah. So Baron and Luthien's good. What else is good?
Well, the whole storyline, for those of you who know Lord of the Rings a little bit, Silmarillion really starts in the first age. It starts kind of at the creation.
Well, it starts like the creation of the world. Yeah.
But which is
a cool story.
It is.
The way
very
he does
cool.
it.
I'd love to talk about that too. Mm-hmm. But in the Silmarillion, the main storyline is a story of these magical stones called the Silmarils that capture the light of these beautiful trees that have been cut down. So these trees gave light to this pretty much the whole world, or at least half the world.
Right, yeah.
And at some point, one of the elves, his name is Feanor, creates these stones, 3 stones, that capture the light of the trees into their stone. And they're beautiful. People love them. Essentially, desire them wholeheartedly. At some point, the great evil dude, Melkor, Morgoth eventually is called, he cuts down the trees. He destroys the trees.
Right, in the rebellion.
And the world is left in darkness. Now, eventually, the gods essentially recreate the sun, the moon. But there's still these Silmarils that people want to find again, because Melkor or Morgoth has stolen them.
Right.
So the primary story is them trying to get the Silmarils, these magical stones, these beautiful stones, back from Morgoth. And the whole storyline is of these elves who essentially go mad in the pursuit of power, in the pursuit of these essentially jewels. Back to Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, it's true.
Essentially, the lust of these
power,
the power that these things would provide. If you held the Silmarils, you'd essentially become king.
Right.
So it kind of covers the deterioration or the descent into madness of
the corruption,
Feanor and his sons.
Yeah.
And that's a fascinating story.
Yeah, the whole thing is. And like you said, the beginning is fascinating because it's a creation myth, and it's drawn after the Bible in a lot of ways. I love some of the things he does in there. Like he describes creation as a song. Like, do you remember that at the beginning? Mm-hmm. He talks about like the character who is his reputation of God. His name, I forget what he calls him, LOTR, I think, starts singing, and then all of the beings that are with him begin to add into the chorus, and this is how the world comes to be. And then Melkor, the one who is the parallel of Lucifer, starts to sing in his own way, and it disrupts the harmony of the chorus that Ilúvatar started, and that's why he gets cast out, because he wanted to do it in his own way, not in the way that God, that Ilúvatar had set. And so it's just it's an interesting take on it, and it kind of gives a different perspective that you don't think. I don't know. It was just very creative, and I enjoyed that a lot.
My theory about that, you have Ilúvatar, you have his gods, what are they called? The Valar.
Yes, the Valar.
You have the Valar singing along in the chorus, and then you have Melkor playing that dissonant line. And this goes on for quite a few pages. And at the end of it, you have this line by Ilúvatar to Melkor. He's essentially, Melkor, you did something evil, you did something bad. But I am sovereign. I am over you. And what you played ended up like the story, the song that we sang, it ended up exactly how I intended it to be.
Interesting.
Even though you were trying to be dissonant, you ended up essentially not, you could not leave my power.
Interesting.
You cannot go away. So that's one bit of Tolkien theology.
Commenting on theology, right?
Commenting on theology, that God is sovereign even over evil.
Yep.
The story is going to be a little nuanced to people who have actually read this section. So this is for you and maybe nobody else ever. But when I first read the story, I thought they were creating Earth. Like they were creating the land, they were creating the seas, the sky, the creatures maybe. But as I thought about it, I think what's actually being created, yes, they're creating material Earth, but they're actually creating history. So at the end,
the whole timeline,
essentially, not exactly fatalism, but kind of fatalism. What you're saying. How at the end of the story of the song, that's actually the end of history, and all of history has been written out. And then at the start of the Silmarillion, the Valar are kind of going down to earth, and they're starting the story afresh. And they're like, "Whoa, man, let's see this story or the song that we sang. Let's see it played out."
Yep.
And they make lines there where they knew some parts of the song, but they didn't know all of the song. So they were a little interested, like, oh, what did Ilúvatar add to the song that we can comprehend? Yeah. Let's see it.
That's actually fascinating. I haven't thought about it in that way, but you're probably exactly right. I also think it's interesting that he went the musical direction with his creation myth, because you know who else did that? C.S. Lewis. Have you read Magician's Nephew? Or do you remember it?
I have. I don't.
Okay, so I don't in that,
I'm a Tolkien fanboy.
Yeah, well, you need to read more Lewis.
Never Pilgrim's Progress. That's
so the children basically end up in Narnia, and this is before The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. This is the beginning of Narnia. They end up there as it's being created, and they get to watch, and it's dark, and there's nothing, and then out on towards the east they see a sunrise, and then they start to hear this note being sung, and as the sun rises, they realize it's Aslan, it's the lion, and then they don't know who he is, but he's walking towards them, and light's coming from him, and he's singing, and he's bringing Narnia to be with a song. And so, and like that idea is pulled from scripture, because you have what's the verse that says in the the morning stars sang together, you know, or I'm forgetting the passage.
I guess.
Anyway, I don't remember, but there's allusions to that kind of thing in the Bible, but I think it's interesting that they both went that route of a song is bringing about new life, which is what music does, in my opinion.
He was probably copying from Tolkien.
I don't think so. Maybe it's just right. Maybe it's just the right way.
Hey, I like C.S. Lewis too.
You need to read more. Have you read the Narnia Chronicles?
Yeah, I haven't finished the last book.
Josiah, you got to finish it.
Yeah, apparently that's the worst one, though.
No, it's not.
I'll do it eventually.
The worst one is...
I got other things to do.
Oh, man, I don't know what the worst one is. You should read more Narnia and watch less Harry Potter.
Yep, I could do both, okay? I'm not that busy. I mean, I'm busy, but not that busy.
You should.
I will find.
You should read them all again.
Find time for things I love.
There's this whole theory now that Lewis... This is a totally different conversation, but that he structured the 7 books off of... Let me think about the least complicated way to say this. The 7 planets. Oh, yes, we talked about this in the mentor meeting. That's right. So you heard about this.
Familiar with the concept. It's cute.
It's very interesting, and take it or leave it. The books are still amazing, but it's probably correct.
My dad's on that, by the way.
Oh, really?
He talks about that all the time.
Is he a big Narnia fan?
He's a big fan of a lot of things. Yeah, he likes. He read the book.
I need to talk to your dad sometime.
Yeah, you probably do.
That'd be cool. We've talked for 1 hour and 16 minutes. Is there anything else we need to hit? I mean, there's so much more we can get into with all that, but...
I know you wanted to talk about football, but I don't want to talk about football because I don't know anything about football.
Josiah's gotten into football this year because the mentors are all into football, so Josiah realized he had to be. Well, you're a baseball guy. Mm-hmm. He's a... I'm going to get this wrong. I know what team you're a fan of. You are a... Hold on. I can't think of it right now. Just say it.
Okay. I'm a fan of the New York Mets.
The Mets. Oh, yes. Okay.
Frequently forgotten.
I'm sorry.
Not the Yankees. It's okay.
My brain went blank. Too much.
Do you want to talk about
Tolkien
baseball? You'd have to have another 2 hours.
Yeah, we have to bring him on for another conversation.
I can talk about Silmarillion for another hour and a half. I can talk baseball's 10 times that.
And this is why Josiah and I get along, because we have a multiplicity of interests.
Because you like listening to rants about baseball, and that's confusing.
Here's a theory that I have. It's okay to be a nerd if you're a nerd about more than one thing.
It's okay to be a nerd as long as you're quiet about it.
Because
unless somebody asks.
Because if you're just a nerd about one thing, it's kind of annoying because that's all you can talk about. But if you're a nerd about 3 or 4 things, then you can talk about stuff, and you're probably good at learning about other things too. I think that's a good theory.
I think I like that.
Yeah. If you're gonna be a nerd, pick several things to be.
Pick a couple
about.
good ones.
And when one is as obscure as the Silmarillion and the other one is baseball, you're pretty well rounded at that point. You're pretty well. I think you are. Anyway, so, but yeah, good stuff. Well, let's just, since it's Saturday, give me predictions for tomorrow for the conference championships.
Who's playing? Wait.
You know,
I got this. Here we go. Okay. It's the Chiefs.
Yep.
They beat the Bills.
They did.
Tragically.
That was very sad.
And they are playing against the Ravens.
Correct. Tomorrow.
With Lamar Jackson, who I would say won me my fantasy league, but in fact just kept me out of last place in my fantasy league. Which is fine.
Fair enough.
That way it worked out. I didn't get last. I think I got 6th. Who has never watched football?
That was your first season.
The other one is the Lions.
Yep.
Let's go Lions, apparently.
Yep.
Go Detroit.
Yep.
Crime way down.
America's
heard about
team
that?
right now. Yeah.
Crazy.
For the first
totally
time.
Believable too. I get it. I've seen football fans. That makes sense.
It's at the lowest level since the last time they made the playoffs.
60 years ago or whatever.
It's wild.
Last time they were this good. And they are playing against 49ers.
Correct.
Because they just beat the Cowboys all the time.
Well, they beat
We lost to the Packers.
They beat the Packers.
I shouldn't say we because I don't really care.
Because, you said you don't care about football, but then you say you're a Cowboys fan.
I am a Cowboys
You and Zach both.
fan. I'm not a follower. I'm just a fan. Like the Cowboys are good, but not good enough to beat the Packers.
They're tough. Zach and I talked about the Cowboys last week. Well, it hurts to talk about. Anyway.
It doesn't hurt me. I am perfectly fine. Because baseball season starts in 60 days.
Are the Mets even going to be good this year?
Who even knows? 2 years ago, we were supposed to be like good. We won 101 games. Amazing. That's crazy. We got better on paper, and we won 75 last year. So we got worse on paper, but our better on paper team won 26 less games. So who knows in baseball? You got to play the games. Got to get lucky.
Even the concept of playing 100 games is crazy.
162.
To me. That's insane.
Every day. Keeps me busy.
I guess they never have to practice.
What are you going to practice? Hitting the ball with a stick? The game is the practice.
You're in the MLB. You're good. You don't have to practice.
You're incredibly good.
And you're rich. I can't believe how much money they get paid for that.
I can't.
Like the NFL is insane, and like the MLB is way, like they pay way more.
Yeah, it's because there's no salary cap.
Yeah, which is. I mean, I guess it's
because spending money doesn't make you good.
It's true.
Like if let's say there's a football team with a salary cap of 700. Think about how many good players they could sign. But nobody else, like everybody's cap is at the same, except for one team, they're at 700. You'd be a crazy good team. Baseball? I mean, the Dodgers are spending however much money. And Shohei Ohtani does $700 million contract.
That's insane. That's crazy.
You know what? They're going to win a lot of games in the regular season, and then they're going to lose to an 85-win wild card team. Because that's how baseball works.
Have you watched Moneyball with Brad Pitt? That was a good movie. I don't remember all of the stuff about it, but
that's on base.
Learned a lot about baseball. Anyway, you're supposed to give me predictions for tomorrow.
Oh.
Chiefs and Ravens.
Chiefs.
I hate you.
I'm a fanboy for the really good teams. Like the legacy.
You just said Lamar Jackson kept you out of last place.
No, I mean, I'm not saying the Ravens. I'm not saying that I don't think the Ravens are good. I'm saying like I think I want the Chiefs to win again because I like it when teams win over and over again. I'm not saying I'm a fan of them. I don't really care what happens.
You just like dynasties.
I like dynasties. I like really villains winning.
And then
in the context of sports, not in Lord of the Rings or anything.
I was about to bring that up, but I didn't. But then you did.
And then we'll go. My spirit wants me to say Lions, but every time I watch the 49ers play, they absolutely dominate. I know they lost games, but when I saw them win games, it was disgusting. AKA the one Cowboy game I watched against them was awful. I was like, man, this is going to be so good.
So you're picking the 49ers.
I'm picking the 49ers.
That's probably likely. But I don't know. I think that so far my predictions have been 85% wrong. So I probably shouldn't even predict. But the Lions have a shot. I think the Niners will win that game. I would love to see the Lions win that game. But we'll see. And then I think the Ravens are going to win, but Patrick Mahomes continues to prove people wrong. But I will say it would be cool if it was a Lions-Chiefs matchup because that was the first game of the season. And the Lions won. And it was a big deal. Mm-hmm. So to have it as the last game of the season too, that'd be kind of sick.
I'll tell you, tomorrow, I'm not watching either one. I'll watch some baseball highlights.
You could watch the end of the second one.
No,
I'll call you and tell you.
You can text me. I mean, you know my ability to respond to texts.
Josiah responds more on Messenger than he does on text. I've learned about Josiah that like the amount of time he takes to respond to you corresponds to the amount that he respects you as a person.
Oh, no.
Is that true?
That's not true at all.
I feel like it is.
That's not true.
Because you told me, you were like, some people it's like...
It's about the content of what the text is. If you're texting me, oh, how are you doing? How's your life at this point? It'll take a little bit for me to respond.
Mm-hmm.
If it's, hey, are you coming to the game at 5 and it's 4:30? If I see it, I will respond right away.
So you are selective.
Anyway,
Selective responder.
Silmarillion. Read
Good
it
stuff.
if you want to be bored, unless you love Tolkien. About football that we talked about. What else did we talk about? Politics and communication.
Speech. We didn't even hit theology. We didn't hit. I was gonna ask you about how much you love. Writing papers. You're my only friend that really loves writing papers.
We slipped into theology a couple times.
We did a little bit. You're right. So
paper writing is fun.
We'll get to that next time. I'll have you on again. We have a lot more we can talk about, but we're at 125, so this is my longest podcast by far.
Okay.
I knew
it's
it was
your fault.
I knew it was going to be. You're fun to talk to, but anyway. Hey, see you next time. Bye, everybody.